Good, thanks, Sarah. Hey, before I get started, I want to make a couple of points. One is that the information that I'm going to present tonight is not my own work. It's not my research. It in fact has come from many organizations and government agencies, including the American Bird Conservancy, National Audubon, the Cornell Lab, the Acopian Center for Ornithology at Muhlenberg College, FLAP Canada, that's the Fatal Light Awareness Project in Canada, and other nonprofit organizations. And I hope that all of you will keep this in mind if one of these organizations were ever to ask you for a donation. They're doing lots of good work, and they're making this kind of knowledge possible. I'm especially happy to give this talk tonight as part of the Neighborhood Habitat Improvement Project, because that project is adding to that body of knowledge, that base of knowledge that is not only allowing me to give this talk today, but it's also preserving and protecting birds. Also, I'm going to, in the course of my talk, I'm going to mention lots of products that are available. They're pretty easy to acquire, but almost all of them are online. And please don't bother to write down the URLs or any of the other technical type of, where to go or how to acquire this stuff. I've written all of that information on a fact sheet that we'll email you a little later. And then finally, I think I want to state right at the beginning that there's a certain irony here that we should all be aware of, and that's that the more steps that you take in your yard to make your yard bird friendly, the greater the chances become that you might have a bird strike a window in your home. Don't let this fact discourage you. Please continue to make your yards as bird friendly as you possibly can. Just be ready and be informed. The point of this talk is to let you know that all of this is really doable, and I hope you keep that in mind as I go through all of this. As Sarah mentioned, I was the editor-in-chief of BirdWatching magazine from 2001 until 2017. Now, and from 2013 or so, I joined the steering committee of the Western Great Lakes Bird and Bat Observatory. I have been the chairman of the board since 2018, and I think around that same time, I also became the director of Bird City, Wisconsin. So I'm wearing a number of hats here tonight. Bird City, Wisconsin, in case you don't know, recognizes the actions that communities, Port Washington included, Ozaukee County included, the city of Milwaukee, and many others take to make their communities bird friendly and to educate their residents about bird friendly practices. One of which is, of course, learning how to prevent bird window collision. Along the way, I also became an author. That's, I guess, maybe if you can imagine me wearing three hats, that's what I'm doing tonight. I am the author of the American Association Field Guide to Birds of Wisconsin, which came out in 2019 and then is available now. And even though I like to give myself a little pat on the back, I do want to let you know that there's 299 species in there, including sandhill cranes and whooping cranes and all of the wood warblers that appear every year here in the Badger State. This pair speaks to us in particular because American Redstart and Kirtland's warbler are two of 40 wood warblers that the Acopian Center for Ornithology at Muhlenberg College has listed as known to strike window glass. So that's a shocking thing when you consider how anticipated these birds are, and that windows in the United States are claiming these birds before they can get up into the boreal or northern Wisconsin to build their nests and breed. Of course, they're not the only ones. According to that same source, Copian Center, over 1,300 species of birds are known to strike sheet glass. And because I'm a soccer fan, I went and I dug in a little bit farther and found my countries that conform to some of my favorite soccer teams. There's 123 species are known to strike glass in Germany, 87 in Mexico, 151 in Brazil, and 210 in Australia. In the United States, the numbers are similarly striking. 278 species are known to strike windows. That's 24% of all the species that are listed in Avibase, the bird listing website. In Canada, the number is similar. The percentage is a little bit higher. 206 species known to collide with windows. That's 29% of all species. It's even worse if you look at the number of birds that die each year. These numbers are from these folks. Well, okay. That's the number of birds that are killed each year is somewhere between 365 million and 988 million birds killed in the United States each year. Those numbers come from a study that was published back in 2014, prepared by researchers from the Migratory Bird Center of the Smithsonian, and also the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. That's the source for the number that you hear all the time with regard to bird mortality caused by windows in the United States, this study. That number, somewhere between 300 and a billion, is second only to the mortality caused by cats. So those are the two human-caused sources of mortality in the United States. So we're talking about a huge source of mortality. But you know, the authors that you see here on the bottom of the screen, they did more than just kind of tally up that number. They also conducted a huge systematic review of published studies of collision, studies about bird collisions and unpublished databases of mortality events. They assembled a gigantic database including over 92,000 fatality records. And then they did something really quite interesting. What they did is they broke all of those records down into categories based on the residences or the building types that were involved in the collisions. They divided the piles into three piles. There were high rises. They categorized those as any building that was 12 stories or taller, low rises, which would be from 4 to 11 stories tall, and residences. And then they calculated how many birds were killed in a year at each category of building. And exactly what you might expect, the high rises were responsible for the greatest mortality. They came up at that time of 24.3 birds killed per building. And perhaps reassuringly to all of us, residences had the lowest amount of mortality, only 2.1 birds per building. But they weren't satisfied with that. They did one truly interesting thing. They then compared the total mortality with the overall number of birds that are killed in a year, and they realized there something that might rob us of our sense of assurance, and maybe goes counter to what you might assume, and that is that the high rises accounted for just a minuscule, less than 1% of total bird mortality in a year, whereas residences accounted for a much larger portion, 44% of total overall bird mortality. This seems counterintuitive until you stop and consider the fact that residences, those 1 to 3 story buildings, make up 87% of all the buildings in the United States. So this means that You and I, if we live in a building that is less than 3 stories tall, as I'm sure many of us do, we have a huge opportunity to really do something to affect a change to address this crisis of collisions in the United States. And you know, the authors, I love this this quote. They said that on a per building basis, if each residence killed only 1 bird per year, and we know that they killed, according to their study, 2.1, but if each one of those residences claimed only 1 bird per year, the high rises would have to kill more than 5,800 birds per year to cause equivalent mortality. This is just to give you an idea of how many more residences there are than those high rises that most people are blamed for bird collisions. So what do we know about bird collisions? It turns out that we know a lot, and at the same time, not a whole lot. We know that bird collisions occur in urban and suburban and rural environments alike. We know that the sex, the age, and the residence status of the birds involved have little influence on the collisions themselves. We know that bird window collisions occur at all times of day, in all seasons, and in all weather conditions. And we know that they're more frequent during winter than they are in migration. This is largely because of the effect of birds gathering at bird feeders in the wintertime. We know that mortality rates increase with the percentage of buildings that are covered by glass. And that, if you stop to think about it, that makes sense, because the more surface area of a building that is covered by glass, the more of that surface area will reflect the vegetation that's around it, and many more opportunities there are for that glass to give the illusion of a passageway that a bird might want to fly through. Mortality rates also increase with the amount of light that a building emits. This is especially the case at nighttime, and it's especially the case during migratory seasons, and especially along migratory corridors, which is where we all are. If you think about it, you know, Lake Michigan is a long north-south leading line for migrants heading south and migrants heading north. So the communities that are along Lake Michigan could have the lighting of the buildings, especially in poor weather, could confuse birds and cause window collisions. And as I mentioned before, the presence of bird feeders also is associated with an increase in mortality rates. We know that 1 in 4 collisions leaves no trace after 24 hours. And the reason is because birds don't offer, a typical bird doesn't offer a great deal of physical mass to remain. It will decay and disappear quickly. But you can't underestimate the role of predators, including dogs, and cats, and crows, and rats, to claim those birds and eat them. When I was the editor of BirdWatching magazine, and when BirdWatching magazine was out in Waukesha, the office was in a 2-story gleaming metal-clad building that had some nice trees right outside it. And I always thought it was novel that there were crows that gathered in the branches of this tree every day. And it was kind of like right outside the one window where you could go to buy yourself a Coke or something like that. And it was only after I had worked there for a while that I realized that the crows had learned that birds were colliding with the reflective surface of our office building, and they were waiting to pick up the carcasses and fly away. It was an easy meal. And then we also know that at single homes, single family homes, 1 in 2 collision results in a fatality. There's many people think that birds, die of a broken neck. In fact, most collision victims succumb to head trauma, such as brain swelling, intracranial pressure, cranial herniation, and in general, the chances of a bird surviving the bird window collision is not especially good. So the problem, what's going on? It's pretty clear. Unlike you and I, birds do not see clear or reflective glass as a barrier. They see reflections. This is not, I suppose, the best picture, but I like it because what it does is it gives a good idea of what a bird might see looking at reflections in these 3 sheets of glass. If I were a bird, I might choose to want to try to fly to one of those trees to perch in, and that would not really be successful. And then birds see passageways where we don't really see them either. You and I might look at this picture here and think, well, this is a kind of an interesting design for maybe an interesting spot to have a lunch or a dinner party, but a bird might look at it and think that it could start from one side of the building and fly through to the other side because the 2 windows on either wall there line up and suggest and give the illusion of a passageway that's clear and open from the right to the left. And then birds panic. This is also part of the problem. Perhaps if you have a bird feeder in your yard, you've been visited by somebody that looks like this young Cooper's hawk. And not all Cooper's hawks charge into a flock of birds at a feeder in order to catch one. I've seen Cooper's hawks fly into flocks simply to make the birds panic and hope that perhaps one of those birds in their panic would hit a glass and then fall stunned to the ground. And that's what the Cooper's hawk would be looking for. So what can we do? It turns out that I think that there are 5 things that we can all do. One of them is we can innovate when building. And I'll explain this a little bit more as I go along. We can also, all of us, take 4 steps, simple steps that cost nothing, that are free. We can make glass visible. We can create barriers. And for the birds that do collide with glass, we can care for them. Innovating while building is a huge topic and one that's probably worthy of 1 or 2 talks all to themselves. So I can't really get into that in great detail here, but some of the examples of what I have in mind are designing buildings so that you avoid transparent passageways and corners, as well as atria and courtyards. One of the saddest things that you'll see is a bird that's trapped inside, that is drawn inside of a courtyard, and perhaps by foliage or a water feature. And then the bird gets inside, but it can't find its way out. Instead, what it finds when it tries to fly are windows and glass that prevent it from getting out of that area. Shielding outside lighting and turning off interior lighting at night. I mentioned this once already. It's especially important when during migration seasons and when the weather is very bad. That's when simply turning off your lights, having lights that are shielded so that they don't shine up, but they shine down. This can really be helpful to birds because birds become confused by lights from the ground in poor weather conditions. Sometimes it can cause them to circle the light, the source of the light, and then get closer and closer until they finally make contact with either a building or the window or the guy wires of a communications tower. And then creating facades, building facades that deter collisions is something that I think designers are getting better and better at. And by that I mean using decorative grills and screens and shades and recessed windows and employing glass that has UV patterns built into it, or maybe is built with ceramic dots or frits that make the pane of glass appear not transparent, but actually makes it visible to a bird and gives it a chance to avoid colliding with it. There's a lot of good examples of this I don't know if any of you have been in New York recently, but this is the facade, the front of the 8th Avenue facade of the New York Times building. And they covered the exterior of that building with a brise soleil, a curtain wall of ceramic rods. And their goal there was to control the amount of light that came into the building and to control the heat gain that occurred on the inside of the glass. And so it wasn't, I don't think that, birds was at the top of the list of the goals that they wanted, but yet this is a perfect example of a facade that takes a very dangerous expanse of glass and turns it into something that is, I don't know, striking and useful. Here's another one. This is the visitor center of the Tracy Aviary in Liberty Park in Salt Lake City. And you can see here that they've created a very fun-looking screen that has been erected, stands a distance away from the glass, and then the exposed pieces of glass have been covered with decals that make the glass apparent, so that a bird on one side of that walkway that's just above the word aviary in this picture would not be deceived into thinking that there was a clear passage from the side where we are and to the greenery on the far side. And of course, you don't need to go all the way to Salt Lake City or New York to see a bird-friendly building. This is the Pfizer Forum here in our own Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's the home of our NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks. But when it opened in 2018, it became the world's first bird-friendly sports and entertainment arena. And it's something I think that we can all be really proud of. Not only did this building achieve LEED Silver certification from the U.S. Green Building Council, but it achieved LEED Bird Collision Deterrence Credit SSPC 55, which very few other buildings can say they have done. And this means that this building not only satisfied the LEED requirements, but it addresses primary reasons that birds collide with buildings, such as reflective and see-through glass and lighting that disorients birds during migration. In particular, all of the lights on this building point downward, and the Bucks, to their credit, have agreed to a lights out policy during migration and late at night. There's also very thin, a thin pattern of fritting in the glass that's not visible from in this picture certainly, but if you were to visit the Pfizer Forum and then look out the glass, you would notice this thin pattern that makes the glass visible to birds and serves to prevent collisions. All of these but the Pfizer Forum, but many examples of really stunning and beautiful examples of bird-friendly building design can be found in this book, a booklet published by the American Bird Conservancy back in 2015, so a couple of years before Pfizer Forum. It's the bird-friendly building design. It came out in 2015, and you can download it as a PDF from the URL on the screen here. But again, don't write it down. I've included that URL in the fact sheet that Sarah and I will make sure that is sent to you afterwards. Simple steps. What are those simple steps that cost nothing that you can do? Well, you can close curtains and blinds. This is a very simple way to address a situation in your home. If you think that a bird is colliding with windows because it can perceive a straight passageway from one window to another. You might have a dining area similar to the one that I showed earlier. You may have a home where two windows come together at a corner, similar to a lot of the Frank Lloyd Wright influenced design. Or there may be just a spot where you can stand outside your home in the front and look through your window in the back and see your backyard. In that case, closing your curtains and blinds will disrupt that illusion of clear passage, and it would be effective and it costs nothing. Another way that you could prevent birds from striking a window is moving houseplants away from the problem window. It's possible, not always likely, but it's possible that you might have some sort of plant in your home that might suggest to a bird that it would be a spot that it would want to perch. If you move it away so it's not visible, that risk goes away. And as I mentioned earlier, you can turn off those lights at night, or you can shield them. There's all kinds of great and very stylish ways that you can take a light that it presently broadcasts light in a general way, as much up as it does down, and shield it so that it only projects light downward. Or you could just start using motion sensors or timers to turn your lights on and off at night. They work great too. And then you can also move your feeders really close to the windows, or use a window-mounted feeder. This comes from a study that Daniel Clem did back 2004. He and his students in Pennsylvania took a number of windows and mounted them in a field, and then they took feeder trays filled with birdseed and placed the birdseed varying distance away from those windows. And then they paid attention to the collisions that ensued or the collisions that didn't ensue, and then noted down whether they were fatal, they caused a fatality or not. And what they found was that feeders, as you can see on this graph, feeders that were placed 1 meter away from the glass, that is, feeders that are placed so close that a bird that might be panicked by that Cooper's hawk I showed you earlier wouldn't be able to get up a big enough head of steam. They wouldn't be able to generate enough forward speed that if they did collide with glass, it would cause a fatality. Whereas a feeder that is, say, 5 or 10 meters away from that pane of glass, those birds would be at top speed, no doubt. They wouldn't see the glass, and that collision would surely be fatal. I know that this works. I've visited my buddy Laura Erickson up in Minnesota, and I've seen her her window-mounted feeder. It's right by the window off of her office, where she did a lot of writing for the magazine and still does. And these are the birds that she calls grocery beaks, because they make you go to the grocery and can eat up everything in a flash. Those are evening grosbeaks, enjoying the window-mounted feeder at her home. The other thing that really works to prevent window collision is to make glass visible. There are many ways that you can do this, including some that are just very simple do-it-yourself operations. You can use temper paint, as you can see in this picture here, but you can also use decals or mylar strips. You can dangle feathers in front of windows. I've seen people hang CDs, remember those, from the outside of their window in front of their glass. But the important thing to remember here about using decals and CDs and things like that is that the pattern is far more important than the single element. In fact, birds are such expert flyers that they may look at a single element on a window and say, oh, well, there's a CD or something hanging there. I'll fly just beside it, or I'll fly below it, and the result will be the same. So it's the pattern, you know, the usage of this temper paint that you see in this window that's important. It's not the single element. And then the rule of thumb for years has always been to follow the 2x4 rule. And that means that no matter how you create what type of a pattern on your window, you should make sure that you don't leave a space that is unmarked on your window that's any larger than, if you can imagine the amount of space that would be taken up by maybe a goldfinch when it's flying. That's about 2 inches from top to bottom, and about 4 inches, the wingspan of a goldfinch from left to right. And this rule is a good one to follow. But what we've learned recently is that the 2x4 rule should probably be better. It would be better to do a 2x2 rule. And the 2x2 rule accommodates a very small bird, such as a hummingbird, which can will fly in the spaces like those in this picture here. I'm sure that everyone has gone to a restaurant, or maybe you've been to a library or any other kind of building where someone decided that they would put up a falcon sticker on a window, and then they said, you know, golly, I've done my part to combat window collisions. And I think that everyone should just, you know, realize that even the shape of a known predator on a glass will not scare away birds. A bird that would look at that window on the right would see a huge expansive open area that they can fly through. And effective of the same decal on the window would look more like the one on the left. That looks pretty daunting, and I'm sure that people would say, oh, I could never do that on my home. But before you reject that out of hand, I want you to think about whether you've ever gone to watch your child play a Little League game, and you've had to sit behind a cyclone fence, or maybe I wonder if you've ever been behind any of the netting that they put up at Miller Park or American Family Fields. You know, you see it for a second, but then pretty soon you get interested in that Josh Hader, or you know, and you want to see what's going on in the field, and pretty soon you don't see that obstruction that was so prevalent before you. And I have to call to mind also the fact that I'm wearing these glasses here today. I remember when I was a boy and I put on these glasses, I thought, oh my gosh, all I can see is just this ring around my visible world. I don't know how I'd ever be able to focus on anything beyond it. But in fact, right now I'm aware of it because I'm talking about it, but generally I don't think about it at all. There's plenty of ways that you can achieve that 2x4 rule and make glass visible without making something so unsightly as that huge mass of falcon stickers. And one of the ways you can do it is with ABC bird tape. This was translucent tape designed and tested by the American Bird Conservancy, and it allows light through, but it comes in either 3-inch wide tape that you can put as stripes on your window, or you can cut into shapes on your own, or it comes in pre-cut 3-inch square shapes like the one that you see here in this picture. It's not available from ABC, but it is available. I found it just this week at Duncraft, the Duncraft online store, where you can find it there. Another way to achieve the same effect is by using Kaleidoscape high performance bird tape. This is the same idea, but it's slightly different because it comes in white or clear, and there's tiny little perforations in the tape itself that allow light to go through, and making it appear, you know, not so obstructive. It doesn't really just block so much of the view from inside there. This is tape that you apply on the outside of your window. In this case, this is a very interesting railing on a deck that is instead of having just like a traditional rungs in between, there is plate glass or plastic, clear plastic, and that strikes me as just a perfect spot to have bird collisions. But as you can see, they've used the bird tape here to make vertical lines on the outside of this railing, and it doesn't really detract much from the view of the trees beyond the railing, and yet it's hugely effective in preventing, making that barrier plain to birds and preventing, you know, going a long way to preventing them from striking it. Another, and I want to back up for a second and just let you know that Kaleidoscape and also ABC bird tape. There's another brand that you might want to pay attention to, and that I know has been tested and done very well in testing by the American Bird Conservancy, and that's bird safety window tape made by Solix, S-O-L-Y-X, Solix. I've included that along with the products that's on this fact sheet that we'll send to you later. One of my favorite products I recommend it all the time is called Acopian Bird Savers. It's also known as Zen Wind Curtains, and it's got that very funky name because these are 1/8 inch diameter nylon cords that are attached on the outside of a window. And so they're attached up at the top, but the bottom is left free to dangle, to blow in the wind. And it's the motion and the presence of those cords that makes the window apparent to a bird that might otherwise see a reflection or maybe a clear passageway in that glass. You can build your own. You could go to www.birdsavers.com. They have complete instructions on how to do it there, or you can just order them from Acopian Bird Savers. The price varies with the glass width that you're asking for, but you could get a 40. I saw on the site that for a window that's about 23 to 25 inches wide, you might use 5 cords, and that would cost $43. Just to give you an idea of how much it might cost. This is, David Sibley has these at his home, and he recommends them. Daniel Clem recommends these. These are like 99, 98% effective. So they really, really work. And many people end up really liking the effect of those lines dangling, the cords dangling on the outside of the window. It's kind of soothing, and it's a little bit arty, in addition to being very, very effective. And if you don't want to take my word for that, you can take Birkenstock's word for it. This photo was taken in Novato in California. This is the Birkenstock USA's 22,000 square foot office building. They have, as you can see, tremendous amounts of just sheet glass, and the Birkenstock building, I think it butts up, or the campus, it butts up against some sort of like a natural area. So it would be attracting lots of birds, to that area, and then birds would fly and smack into these windows. So they had a huge problem. So they chose Acopian Bird Savers, and you can see that they've been hung on the outside of these windows. And the person who was responsible for this project has called them, quote, 99.9% effective. So it really, really works in reducing bird collisions. There's other ways, of course, to make windows visible. I don't know if any of you remember those little dots, candy buttons, little dots of candy that were on a piece of paper that you would just pull off, and you would eat the candy but leave the paper. This is a means, feather-friendly, do-it-yourself tape is a way to affix a grid of little white dots on the exterior of a window. You press the tape along the window, you smooth it down with a credit card or some other straight edge, and then you pull away the backing paper, and you leave these small white dots in a unobtrusive grid on your window, making the window perfectly obvious to birds that might come close to it. They come in a kit with 100 feet of tape, measuring strips, and instructions, and you can order them at the URL here. And of course, Kaleidoscape makes more than just the bird tape. They also make these big sheets of vinyl or polyester film. This is the same sort of stuff that you see covering buses in Milwaukee and probably other spots. When the buses have been turned into a rolling ad for whatever, and the image area of that ad covers not only the metal sides of the bus but also the windows. But the interesting part about it is that you sit inside the bus and you look through the window, you can see out. Well, that's the way that this works on windows of buildings also. Even though the white kaleidoscape covering the windows in this picture it presents just an opaque clearly non-reflective surface that would not be something that a bird would ever choose to fly toward or through, people inside can see out of it because of all the perforations in that glass. The cool thing about Kaleidoscape is that it comes in all kinds of patterns. You can get it in stripes and dots and like the tape that I mentioned earlier. If you send them an image or artwork, they will make the Kaleidoscape have that image. This is really the way that the buses get covered with all that stuff. But you can do the same thing with the windows of your home. If you have a window that is a real problem area, this might be a good option to take care of that. This is another example. This is the Bear Country exhibit at the Philadelphia Zoo, viewed from the inside of the building, looking out. It's windows that had a history of bird collisions, because you can tell there's just a huge expanse of glass and lots of vegetation that would be reflected in the glass. So it would be really an inviting target for a bird collision. But they used Kaleidoscape to create this charming pattern of birds and leaves up above, and then just ran some horizontal lines across the bottom of the glass. Visitors to the Bear Country exhibit can easily look through and enjoy the bears romping and doing what bears do on the other side of the glass, but the window is no longer a threat to the birds that might be waiting in the trees and all around. So in addition to making windows visible, you can create barriers. And one of the coolest and one of the easiest ways to erect a barrier is to use regular old window screens. You know, just to kind of keep the skeeters out on your home or your cabin. That, because it stands at a slight distance away from the glass, in most instances creates a somewhat of a cushion effect that it serves to protect birds. Another way that you can create a barrier that isn't really very well known is by using something called easy up shades. Easy up shades are they're used more commonly down south. I've seen them in Florida and other southern states where there's a real need to prevent the kind of heat gain that occurs when that real hot Florida sun shines through your windows and the inside of your house just bakes and bakes and bakes. So what this is it's a solar shade screen mesh that can be custom made to the size and shape of the window that you want to put it on. But then what it affixes to the glass itself with some suction cups. And the cool thing about that is that the suction cups make the barrier itself stand very taut across the exterior of the glass, but at a slight distance away from the glass. So there's like this taut mesh barrier before the glass, so that a bird that might hit that mesh would get sort of a trampoline or a cushioning effect before it made contact with the very hard and unforgiving surface of the glass. Again, this is another product that is worth your attention, and it's on that information sheet that we'll send to you. Another one that has been around for years and really works really well is called the Bird Crash Preventer. It's a pre-assembled curtain of monofilament lines, like fishing lines, that hangs from a square metal bracket up above the window and the bottom. So it's kind of a taut array of horizontal lines. They're about 3 inches apart and about 5 inches away from the glass. And this works by making that window apparent visually to a bird. So instead of looking into that window and just seeing that birch tree reflected, a bird would see those vertical lines. And then the manufacturer says that a bird that was unlucky enough to come and fly toward that window would make contact with the lines, spread its wings, and have an opportunity to avoid making contact with the window before it actually hit the surface of the glass. These are available. You can get them custom made, and they make these for sliding glass doors also, and they come in dark brown or white. So you have a bit of options there. This is the bird screen. Bird screen is a transparent black fiberglass screen that hangs loosely in front of, or that is the exterior of a window. So it does two things. The black transparent fiberglass mesh breaks up the reflections, or makes the reflections not so obvious on the surface of the glass. And it also creates kind of like this preventive layer, this little cushioning layer on the outside of the glass. So a bird that does make contact with it might get kind of a trampoline effect, where it would kind of bounce off of that bird screen rather than making full-on contact with the glass. This one, unlike the bird crash preventer, you can attach it using suction cups, or you can screw it in. The bird crash preventer, it has to be screwed in with brackets above and below. So if you're not really into doing that, that would not. So those are ways that you can make glass visible and create barriers and innovate while birding. The final step that I wanted to talk about tonight is caring for injured birds. I know it's a terrible moment when you hear the thud, and then you go out and you see a white-throated sparrow lying injured, or a hermit thrush or something outside there. But this is something that I've done many times. Is I've immediately grabbed either a paper bag or a cardboard box and a towel from inside the house, and I've gone and I've gently covered and caught the bird. Generally, a stunned bird is not going to resist or fly away, so it's not a challenge to catch the bird. The challenge is to pick it up gently enough that you don't do any further damage to its wings or to any of its feathers. Then you place the bird in an unwaxed paper bag or a cardboard box that can be closed, and that you want to be able to close it and cover it securely, and hopefully there are some air holes, so there's a little bit of ventilation. And then you want to place that box containing the bird in a warm, dark, and quiet place. Turn off the radio, keep it away from the dog, try and give the bird a quiet spot to recover, and then check on the bird but don't handle it. You want to look for signs of injury that might include like a broken leg, an obviously broken wing, swollen eyes, or a chipped or cracked beak. And then just wait a little while. If the bird seems to recover, take it outside and let it go. I did that this spring with a oh gosh, what was it? With a bird that struck a window at our house here, my recommendation from that is that as you open the bag or you open the box, make sure that you point the bag or the box away from you, because if the bird is recovered, it will want to get out, and it will come out in a shot. So you don't want your face in the way. If the bird does not recover, sadly, contact a wildlife rehabilitator. For me here, because I live in Milwaukee County, that's pretty simple. I just either I can check the I usually take the birds to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of the Wisconsin Humane Society. It's right in downtown Milwaukee. You can reach them at this URL, or you can call. If you are outside of Milwaukee, they will refer you to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Directory that is kept by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And that can be found at that very long URL here on the screen, or by calling 888-WDNR-INFO. And again, these numbers and the URLs are available. So you should be able to locate a rehabilitator here in Milwaukee County or outside of Milwaukee County. If you are interested in learning even more about bird collisions and preventing them, I can direct you to the page that we have on the Bird City, Wisconsin website. It is the Sick, Injured, and Baby Birds page, which you can find at that URL. The American Bird Conservancy has a series of pages, a whole section on glass collisions and how to avoid them. You can find that at abc.org/glass-collisions. And FLAP Canada, the Fatal Light Awareness Program, has an excellent amount of information called Stop the Birds Hitting Your Windows that you can find there. And again, these URLs also in the information sheet that was sent to you. And with that, I will wrap this up, and then I'd be happy to answer some questions. I hope I can. If you would like more information about the observatory, you can find that at this URL and on Facebook. And Bird City, Wisconsin is available online at birdcitywisconsin.org. And you can find us as well on Facebook at Bird City, Wisconsin. So thanks. If you have questions, please shoot them my way.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute and offer them. Somebody sent a message that if you need to call a rescue for a bird, you can use Animal Help Now, which I believe will show you a rescuer near you.
That's great.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, thank you very much, Chuck. It was very informative. And like we said earlier, we will be, oh.
Sorry, excuse me. Hi, this is Renata. Wait, I wasn't sure if I exactly how to ask. I was looking for a chat box to type a question, but I guess that's Zoom, not this. Okay. I was wondering, I've already seen the survey about the bird feeders, where if you keep them close to the window, that they didn't see any bird deaths. But I've had several occurrences where I've been like walking downtown, and you're walking next to a building that's all glass, but there's bushes in front of the building, in front of the glass windows, and all of a sudden a bunch of birds, you'll startle a bunch of birds, they'll fly out from the bush and they'll hit the glass. And I've seen a couple of times where the birds are like stunned. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on, if you've thought about that survey. Okay, they said, I think it showed 0. I mean, I don't know how large that survey was, or, is it just that, it's still possible for birds to be injured when they're close to a glass window, or is it, is it just like a very low number compared to, the farther out you get, there's a lot higher numbers, or just wondering what your thoughts are on that? Or
that's a good question. I'm going to try and go back to that slide and see if I can get that. The difference between 1 meter and 2 meters, that's like 3 feet to 6 feet of distance. And the interplay, so what we're really talking about here is putting your window smack dab, sticking it on your window. That would be a 0 distance bird feeder. And the farther away you get from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4 meters, you can see that those bars rise, and that is the proportion of bird fatalities that would occur at those distances. Having said that, one thing also that could easily be a topic of another talk would be landscaping and vegetation planted around buildings. And again, I could, I don't really want to, beat up too bad on my former employer, but one of the things that they also had, in addition to those trees around that building, were beautiful. I think they were crab apple trees, and they formed these beautiful pink blossoms in the springtime that were just, that the cedar waxwings just flocked to those trees. And then they would get up as a flock, they would leave the tree, and they would fly as a group to this other group of a similar flock of waxwings that they would see flying toward them, reflected in the surface of this building. And so you have like this perfect storm of planting near a building that served to bring birds close to the building, and a lot of reflective surfaces on the building itself that then confused them and made it very collision very likely. So this could definitely happen. You know, that if there is birds are taking shelter in bushes, close to, leading to landscaping near a building, it wouldn't surprise me at all that a bird might fly out of that, especially if it got panicked, if it was frightened out of it, or it felt like it needed to move quickly and injure itself in the glass. So yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have something also. I contacted Kaleidoscape earlier this year, and I bought the strips that you install and then peel the tape off, and you have strips that are 3/4 inch wide, and you have them 4 inches apart.
Yeah.
And we have trapezoid windows that are like 7 feet with the angle of the roof of the house. The middle ones are 7 feet, and the next ones are 5 feet, and the next ones are like 2.5 or thereabouts on each side. So it was this big expanse of glass. And I did not know how to protect those birds from that other than trying to hang up some netting or something like that. And a friend told me about the Kaleidoscape. So I looked it up, and my daughter helped me install them. Very easy to install, and you don't hardly notice them from the inside. You can see the stripes, but you can see right through them. We did the clear and not the white.
Excellent.
Since we put them on, which was the first weekend in June, we have not had a bird hit those windows, and every week we had birds hitting those windows before. So I attest to the success of the work involved was well worth it. I just hope they last a long time, because, you know, it's hard to get up there to do that.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. That's really great to hear. You know, and one of the other points that I'd like to make is that you know, sometimes it pays to look at your house and look at the windows that are causing the problem. What you might find is that there might be just 1 or 2 windows that cause a problem, or that, you know, just one window in a certain part of the house, but not any of the other windows anywhere else. So once you are armed, that little bit of information is very powerful, because what it means is that that's where you should focus your energy. That's where you should focus your dollars. That's where you should focus your effort. Because if you can solve that problem, you will, people frequently will say, oh, I don't want to have all my windows, you know, all covered up with this stuff, you know, and it's kind of wrong on the face of it, because really all you need to do is just address those problem windows, and you will address the problem of birds hitting your windows.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. If you think of questions later, please feel free to email us and I can send them along to Chuck.
Yep.
Again, thank you so much for coming. We will be sending a recording out in the next few days that will also include the list of resources that Chuck referenced in his talk.
Great.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.